Welcome, my dear friends, curious souls from all corners of the world. I am your storyteller for tonight. My job is not merely to read from dusty old pages, but to breathe life into them, so that thousand-year-old legends may once again rise, radiant and tragic. Tonight, we will speak not just of a god. We will speak of a symbol, a king, a husband, a father, and a being who carried within him both dazzling light and the deepest shadows. We will speak of Zeus. Many know him through the image of a powerful god with lightning bolts in hand, reigning from the peak of Mount Olympus. But have you ever asked yourself, what is that throne truly made of? What was the price paid for it? And what is the real secret that it guards? This is not just a story of a power struggle, but an epic saga of destiny, of growth, and of the cost of maintaining balance in the universe. So, take a deep breath, and let the crisp air of the sacred mountain fill your lungs. Listen to the wind whispering through the ancient olive trees. Our story? Zeus, god of thunder and the secret of the Olympian throne, is about to begin. Part 1. The prophecy in the darkness before Olympus, before the lightning bolts, there was fear. A primal fear, as thick as the cosmic night. That fear reigned in the heart of Cronus, king of the Titans, who had overthrown his own father, Uranus, to seize power. Cronus's throne was built on betrayal, and therefore it was forever shaken with paranoia. Mother Earth, Gaia, had uttered a prophecy, a curse that dripped into Cronus's ear each night. As you have done to your father, so one day one of your own children will overthrow you. The shadow of this prophecy haunted Cronus's every sleep, turning his throne into a bed of thorns. Absolute power came with absolute fear, and Cronus, in his madness, chose the most monstrous of solutions. He swallowed each of his children the moment they were born. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. The great future kids, all of them, were imprisoned in the endless darkness of their father's stomach. The heart of Rhea, Cronus's wife, was shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. Each birth was a glimmer of hope extinguished in a choked sob. She watched her beautiful children disappear behind her husband's lips, and a feeling of helplessness gnawed at her soul. But a mother's love is a fire that never goes out, even in the most desperate of storms. When her 6th child was about to be born, Rhea knew she could bear it no longer. She would not let this child's light be swallowed by darkness. In secret, she went to Mother Earth, weeping for her fate and that of her children. Gaia, with the wisdom of eons, showed her a path full of risk, but the only path of hope. That night, on the distant island of Crete, in a cave hidden deep behind treacherous cliffs, the cry of a newborn baby echoed, not the cry of fear, but the roar of future thunder. The child's name was Zeus. Rhea, with tears in her eyes, but determination in her gaze, wrapped a large stone in swaddling clothes and presented it to Cronus. The Titan, blinded by his fear, swallowed the stone without a second thought. He did not know that what he had just consumed was the guarantee of the prophecy's fulfillment, while the true hope of the universe, the future king of the gods, was safe in a faraway place, protected by the boundless love of his mother and the shelter of Mother Earth herself. Rhea's tears fell on the soil of Crete, not tears of sorrow, but tears of sacrifice and faith. A king had been born in secret, and the fate of the cosmos had begun to be rewritten from that very moment. Part 2. The Pipes of Crete. Crete was no palace. Zeus was not raised in fine silks with a scepter, but with earth, wind, and the sound of the sea. He was not nursed by a queen, but by the sweet milk of Amalthea, a gentle goat nymph. Amalthea's eyes held a warmth Zeus had never known, and it was from this divine creature that he learned his first lesson in kindness. He had no Titan guards, but the warrior curates, who would dance and clash their spears against their shields whenever he cried, to drown out the sound of his infant wails, lest they reach the ears of the tyrannical Cronus. The clash of metal was not the sound of war, but a symphony of protection, a silent promise that he would be kept safe. Zeus grew up as a child of nature. He ran barefoot on the hills, feeling the steadfastness of the earth beneath his feet. He breathed the salty air of the sea, learning of its vastness and untamable power. He looked to the sky, saw the eagles soaring, and felt a strange connection, as if their wings were his own, and that sky was his destiny. He played with the nymphs, learning their clear laughter and the beauty of all things. They taught him how to listen to the whispers of the leaves, how to understand the language of the streams. In the isolation of the island, Zeus found the deepest connection to life, a connection his father, Cronus, in his paranoia on the throne, had long since lost. This was not the education for a tyrant, but the nurturing for a true king. He learned that strength comes not just from muscle, but from understanding. That power is not about domination, but about protection. One day, while playing, Zeus accidentally broke off one of Amalthea's horns. Filled with remorse, he embraced the gentle goat nymph. To make amends, he blessed the broken horn. From then on, it became the horn of plenty, the cornucopia, capable of being filled with whatever food or drink its owner desired. That was Zeus's first miracle. It was not a destructive lightning bolt, but an act of atonement and gratitude. It showed that deep in the heart of this future god was not a thirst for power, but a desire to share and to give. The shepherd boy on Crete was growing up, and with him, a new concept of kingship was slowly taking shape. Part 3. The Call of Destiny. The years passed, and the shepherd boy of yesterday had become a strong young man. His eyes held the color of a stormy sky, and in his veins the blood of the gods boiled. He felt an immense power coursing through him, a power that could not be contained forever in the peace of Crete. And then destiny came for him in the form of Métis, the goddess of wisdom and prudence. She appeared before Zeus like a misty vapor, her deep eyes holding the knowledge of the universe. "O Zeus," she spoke, her voice as clear as a mountain spring, "your peaceful life is about to end. You are not a shepherd. You are a king in exile, the hope of your imprisoned siblings. You are the storm that is about to rise and sweep away tyranny." Métis told Zeus the whole truth about Cronus's cruelty, the prophecy, his mother Rhea's sacrifice, and his 5 siblings languishing in their dark prison. For the first time, Zeus understood the connection he felt with the sky. It wasn't admiration. It was inheritance. He understood the power rising within him. It wasn't a gift. It was a responsibility. A divine rage burned in Zeus's chest, but Metis tempered it with her wisdom. "Anger is a fire," she said, "but wisdom is the smith who forges that fire into a weapon. We cannot face Cronus with brute force alone. He is a Titan, an ancient power. We must use his own fear against him." Under Metis's guidance, a plan was forged. Zeus would not attack directly. He would disguise himself as a cupbearer, a nobody in Cronus's court, to get close to his father. Metis prepared a special potion, an herbal mixture that would induce a powerful emetic effect. The moment Zeus left Crete was an emotional one. He bid farewell to Amalthea, the nymphs, and the Curetes who had protected him. He looked back at the island that had nurtured him, promising that its peace would be the model for the world he would create. When Zeus set foot in Cronus's palace, he felt a bone-chilling cold. There was no laughter here, only the silence of fear. The Titans moved like ghosts, always wary of their paranoid king's wrath. Zeus, in his servant's guise, offered the poisoned cup to Cronus. The Titan, suspecting nothing, drank it down. And then a violent spasm seized him. Cronus collapsed, and from his mouth the stone Rhea had given him long ago was disgorged first. Following that, to the astonishment of the entire court, 5 fully grown, unharmed gods were freed from their dark prison. Poseidon, with eyes the color of the deep sea. Hades, with the quiet demeanor of the shadows. Hera, with the majesty of a queen. Demeter, with the warmth of the earth. And Hestia, with the gentle flame of the hearth. They looked at Zeus, the youngest brother they had never met, and in their eyes there was no strangeness, only gratitude and a newly born alliance. The call of destiny had been answered. The war for the throne of Olympus and for the freedom of the universe had officially begun. Part 4. The Alliance of the Forgotten. That spectacular rescue was only the beginning. Cronus and the Titans, loyal to him, accustomed to ruling by violence, would not give up power easily. A great war was inevitable, a war that would shake the very roots of the cosmos. Zeus and his siblings, though divine, were still young and alone. They needed allies. And once again, Mother Earth, Gaia, whispered to Zeus, showing him the way to the most unexpected of allies, her other children with Uranus, whom Cronus himself had imprisoned in the depths of Tartarus. They were the one-eyed Cyclopes, masters of the forge, who could command fire and metal. And they were the 100-handed Hecatoncheires, whose physical strength was unmatched. They had been forgotten in darkness for millennia, their hearts filled with resentment for Cronus. Zeus, along with Poseidon and Hades, embarked on the journey to Tartarus, a place even darker and more desperate than the prison inside Cronus. Here, the air was thick with suffering, and the clanking of chains echoed like an endless dirge. When Zeus stood before the chained giants, he did not command or coerce. He showed them respect. He told them of a new world, a world where their strength and talents would be honored, not imprisoned. He promised them freedom. The hearts of the Cyclopes and Hecatoncheires, hardened by hatred, were moved. They saw in Zeus's eyes not the deceit of Cronus, but the fire of a true leader. They agreed to join the war. To show their gratitude and trust, the Cyclopes led Zeus to their forge, in the heart of a burning volcano. Here they forged divine weapons, treasures that would decide the fate of the war. For Zeus, they forged the Thunderbolt, a weapon that held the pure power of the sky, capable of shattering anything. For Poseidon, they forged the Trident, a weapon that could stir the seas, create earthquakes, and summon tidal waves. And for Hades, they forged the Helm of Darkness, a weapon that allowed its wearer to merge with the shadows, becoming invisible to all enemies. When Zeus held the thunderbolt in his hand for the first time, he felt a limitless energy course through his body. It was not just a weapon, it was a part of him, a symbol of the power and responsibility he was about to wield. The alliance was formed. On one side, the old generation of Titans, who ruled by fear and oppression. On the other, the new generation of gods, led by Zeus, along with the forgotten giants, fighting for freedom and a new order. The storm had gathered. The sky before the battle grew ominously silent. The entire universe held its breath, awaiting the great war that would decide who was worthy to sit on the supreme throne. Part 5. The Titanomachy, when heaven and earth clashed. The war lasted for 10 years. 10 years of the earth trembling, the seas roaring, and the skies ablaze. This was no ordinary battle. This was the Titanomachy, the great war between the Titans and the Olympian gods. The world became a colossal battlefield. The Titans, with their raw, primal strength, uprooted mountains and hurled them at their enemies. Atlas, Cronus's mightiest general, single-handedly held back entire legions. Cronus, from his throne on Mount Othrys, bellowed commands that made the ground crack. But the young gods, with their vigor and determination, did not yield. Zeus, from the peak of Mount Olympus, unleashed blinding thunderbolts, each one a sentence of judgment upon his foes. The light of his bolts illuminated the darkest corners of the war, becoming a beacon of hope for his city. Poseidon, with his trident in hand, summoned mountain-high tidal waves that washed away enemy ranks. The sea, once neutral, had now chosen a side, and it had chosen its new king. Hades, with his helm of darkness, moved like a phantom through the enemy lines, sowing chaos and fear from within. He was not the personification of evil, but of the end that had come for a tyrannical era. Hera, Demeter, and Hestia, while not fighting on the front lines, were the soul of the resistance. They tended to the wounded, maintained morale, and by their very presence reminded everyone what they were fighting for: a home, an ordered world, and a brighter future. The 100-handed Hecaton chairs were unstoppable war machines. With their hundreds of arms, they continuously hurled massive boulders toward Mount Othrys, creating a devastating meteor shower. During those 10 years, Zeus matured immensely. He didn't just learn how to fight, he learned how to lead. He learned how to inspire, how to coordinate the strengths of all his allies. He realized that the thunderbolt in his hand, as powerful as it was, could not win the war alone. True strength came from unity, from the trust his allies placed in each other. Finally, the decisive moment came. Zeus, gathering all his power, unleashed one final, cataclysmic thunderbolt, an attack that carried the will of all the gods and their allies. The bolt struck Cronus directly, toppling the Titan from his throne. The fall of Cronus was the end of the war. The remaining Titans either surrendered or were imprisoned in the depths of Tartarus. Atlas, for his role as a commander, received a special punishment. To bear the weight of the heavens on his shoulders for all eternity, a permanent reminder of the price of defeat. When the dust of battle settled, a solemn silence fell over the cosmos. The gods stood on the peak of Olympus, looking down at the world they had just liberated. They had won, but the cost of victory was immense. The world was scarred. And now came a task even harder than winning, the task of rebuilding and ruling. Zeus looked at his hands, the hands that had wielded destructive lightning. He knew that from now on, these hands must learn to build. The war for the throne was over, but the true test of the throne was only just beginning. Part 6. The Burden of the Crown. Victory brought elation, but power brought burdens. After imprisoning the Titans, the three brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, decided to divide the world. They did not fight over it, but drew lots to show their fairness. Zeus received the sky and supreme rule on Mount Olympus. Poseidon received the sea. Hades received the underworld, the realm of the dead. It was a fair division, but it also created invisible distances between the brothers who had once fought side by side. The throne of Olympus, crafted by the Cyclopes from marble and pure gold, glittered in the eternal light. But for Zeus, it was not just a chair. It was the center of the universe, the point upon which all responsibility converged. He quickly realized that ruling was far more difficult than conquering. He had to establish laws for both gods and mortals. He had to maintain balance among the other gods, beings with powerful personalities and their own ambitions. He had to settle disputes, punish the wicked, and protect the weak. And above all, he had to face his loneliness. At the height of his power, Zeus was no longer the youngest brother protected by his siblings. He was the king of the gods. Every word, every decision he made affected the fate of millions. The burden was immense. He married Hera, his sister, who had fought alongside him. A marriage of power, but also of love. Hera became the queen of Olympus, the symbol of marriage and family. But her jealousy, fueled by Zeus's many affairs, became a permanent, dark cloud over Olympus. Why did Zeus have so many affairs? Many tell it as the unchecked lust of an all-powerful god. But perhaps the truth is deeper. Perhaps, in the loneliness of his throne, he was searching for connection, for different aspects of life that he felt he was losing. He sought wisdom in Metis, grace in Eurynome, memory in Mnemosyne, justice in Themis. Each child born from these unions, like Athena, the Graces, the Muses, the Horae, was not just the result of infidelity, but an effort by Zeus to bring more aspects of order, beauty, and knowledge into the world he ruled. But that could not excuse the pain he caused Hera. The magnificent throne could not bring him peace in his own home. And then a new threat emerged, not from outside, but from the very ones he loved. Some of the gods, led by Hera, grew tired of Zeus's rule. They felt he had become tyrannical. They conspired to overthrow him. They succeeded in binding Zeus while he slept, using an unbreakable net. The god of thunder, for the first time since the Titan War, was helpless. He was humiliated, stripped of his weapon. The throne of Olympus stood empty and cold. In that moment of despair, Thetis, a sea nymph who was the only one still loyal, went for help. She called upon Briareus, one of the 100-handed hecatoncheires whom Zeus had freed. Briareus, with his immense gratitude, used his 100 arms to untangle the complex net, freeing Zeus. When Zeus was free, his rage was terrifying. He punished the conspirators. But after the anger came a profound sadness. He realized the throne didn't just create enemies. It could turn allies and even family into enemies. He sat alone on his throne, the thunderbolt silent in his hand. He had all the power, yet he felt emptier than ever. He began to wonder, was there some secret to this throne, something he still didn't understand? A wisdom deeper than power, something that could help him rule not just with might, but with wisdom and the love of all? The burden of the crown was teaching Zeus a bitter lesson. Winning the war is only the first step. Being worthy of that victory is a never-ending struggle. Part 7. The Fire of Prometheus and the Revealed Secret Among the Titans. There was one who had not fought against Zeus. His name was Prometheus, meaning forethought. He had foreseen Cronus's defeat and had chosen to side with the Olympians. Prometheus was a friend and advisor to Zeus in the early days of building the new order. But Prometheus had a love greater than his loyalty to Olympus. It was his love for humankind. At that time, humans were weak creatures, living in dark caves, shivering from the cold and afraid of the night. They lived and died in ignorance, no different from wild animals. Prometheus, with his compassionate heart, felt pity. He believed humanity had the potential for greatness, but they needed a spark, an enlightenment. He begged Zeus to give fire to humankind. But Zeus refused. The king of the gods was afraid. He feared that with fire, humans would become strong. They would learn to forge metal, to create weapons. They would no longer fear the gods. They would become a threat to the order he had worked so hard to establish. It was the fear of a king who had witnessed his own father's downfall. But Prometheus could not accept this. He believed that holding back a race's development was a greater crime than any potential risk. And so he committed the greatest act of defiance. He snuck into Olympus, took a spark of fire from the chariot of the sun god Helios, hid it in a hollow fennel stalk, and brought it down to humankind. That fire brought not just warmth, it brought light, knowledge, and hope. Humans began to cook their food, forge tools, and build homes. They gathered around the fire at night, telling stories, creating art and culture. Civilization was born from the spark Prometheus had stolen. When Zeus found out, his rage was greater than even when he had been betrayed. This was not just disobedience. This was a direct challenge to his authority and his wisdom. He felt humiliated, outsmarted. The punishment Zeus devised for Prometheus was one of the cruelest in all of mythology. He had Prometheus chained to a rock in the Caucasus Mountains. Every day, an eagle, the symbol of Zeus himself, would fly down, tear open Prometheus's abdomen, and eat his liver. Being an immortal titan, his liver would regenerate each night, and the torture would be repeated the next day, forever. It was the act of a tyrant, not an enlightened king. Zeus had allowed his pride and fear to cloud his reason. And in that very moment, the secret of the throne revealed itself. When Zeus returned to Olympus and sat on his throne, he did not feel the satisfaction of a victor. Instead, he felt a coldness he had never known. The throne seemed to be mocking him. He suddenly understood. The secret of the throne was not an object, a magic spell, or a hidden prophecy. The secret of the throne was that it was a mirror. It reflected the soul of the one who sat upon it. When Cronus sat on the throne with a heart full of fear and paranoia, the throne turned him into a monster who devoured his own children. Now, as Zeus sat on the throne with a heart full of pride and anger, the throne was showing him the image of a tyrant, an image no different from his father's. The throne did not grant absolute power. It amplified the nature of the ruler. It was a never-ending test. To be worthy of it, a ruler had to constantly battle the demons within himself: pride, fear, desire. Prometheus's act was not a betrayal. It was a lesson, a painful lesson that Zeus was forced to learn. He had punished Prometheus cruelly, but deep down he knew Prometheus had been right. Progress cannot be stopped, and a true king must learn to guide change, not suppress it in fear. Zeus still sat on the throne, but for the first time he felt its true weight. It was not the weight of power, but the weight of self-reflection. He had won the Titanomachy, but his greatest war, the war against himself, had only just begun. Part 8. The Cracks and the Seeds of Atonement. The punishment of Prometheus left an indelible scar on the soul of Zeus and the Order of Olympus. The other gods, though they didn't dare to protest openly, fell into a fearful silence. They saw in that punishment the very cruelty they had fought to overthrow. Zeus felt their distance. He was still king, but he was no longer the unconditionally loved leader he had been. He sank deeper into his loneliness. His affairs became more numerous, more hurried, as if in a desperate attempt to prove his vitality and power, to fill the void that wisdom had not yet filled. Each affair carved a deeper wound into Hera's heart. Her jealousy was no longer just personal. It transformed into a systematic rage. She vented her anger on Zeus's lovers and their children. The persecution of Leto, mother of Apollo and Artemis. The torment of Heracles, Zeus's greatest demigod son. Olympus became a stage for family intrigues, for tragedies sparked by its own king. The world of the gods, once built on a foundation of unity against the Titans, now showed cracks from within. But even in the shadow of his mistakes, seeds of atonement began to sprout. Zeus, though proud, was not entirely blind. He watched his children grow, and through them he began to relearn the lessons he had forgotten. He saw in Athena the daughter born from his own mind, a strategic and just wisdom, a perfect blend of strength and intellect. He watched her become the patron of cities, teaching humans art and law. Athena was the embodiment of the ruler he aspired to be. He saw in Apollo the light of art, music, and knowledge. He heard Apollo's prophecies at Delphi, which spoke not just of the future, but reminded humanity of truth and moderation. He saw in Artemis an independence and a fierce connection to wild nature, a reminder of the natural world he had once been a part of on Crete. And especially, he watched Heracles, the son who carried the blood of both God and man. Zeus saw Heracles endure so much suffering, much of it caused by Hera's jealousy. But Heracles never broke. He completed his 12 labors not just with brute strength, but with indomitable will, courage, and wisdom. Heracles, a demigod, was teaching the king of the gods the true meaning of being a hero. Zeus did not intervene directly to free Heracles from his trials because he knew that those very trials were forging a great soul. But he protected him silently, giving his son indirect aid. The love of a father, though complex and conflicted, was still there. Through his children, through their triumphs and their tragedies, Zeus began to look at himself again. He saw the consequences of his actions. He realized that power was not about imposing one's will on the world, but about the ability to nurture and protect the best things in it. The wound from punishing Prometheus was still there, but in Zeus's heart, a slow change was taking place. He was still a proud and temperamental god, but now there was a touch of contemplation, a hint of regret, and a quiet desire to right his wrongs. He was just waiting for an opportunity, one final test, to prove that he had learned the lesson from the secret of the throne. Part 9. The Gigantomachy, the final lesson that opportunity arrived, not in the form of a plea, but as an all-out war that threatened the very existence of Olympus. It was the Gigantomachy, the great war with the giants, known as the Gigantes. The Gigantes were children of Mother Earth, Gaia, born from the blood of Uranus that dripped onto the earth. Gaia, furious that her Titan children were imprisoned in Tartarus, had birthed the Gigantes for one sole purpose: to overthrow the Olympian goddess. They were monstrous, powerful beings, with hair and beards made of living snakes. Unlike the Titans, who fought for power, the Gigantes fought with pure hatred. They were the personification of primal chaos against civilized order. But there was a strange prophecy concerning this war. The Olympian gods could not kill the Gigantes on their own. They could only be victorious if they had the help of a mortal. This prophecy initially bewildered the gods. Why would they, the all-powerful, need a weak mortal? But Zeus, who had sat on the throne long enough to learn humility, understood its deeper meaning. This was the final lesson. The throne of Olympus could not stand if it was separate from the world below. The power of the gods would be meaningless without connection and cooperation with the beings they ruled. The survival of the divine order depended on the courage of a human being. And that mortal was none other than Heracles. After completing his 12 labors, Heracles was invited to Olympus to participate in the fateful war. Zeus looked at his son, no longer an outcast demigod, but a champion, a bridge between the divine and mortal worlds. In that moment, the pride in Zeus's eyes overshadowed all regret. The war erupted with ferocity. The Gigantes attacked Olympus from all sides. They hurled rocks and burning oak trees at the mountain's peak. But this time, the gods did not fight as individuals. They fought as a family. Zeus, with his thunderbolts, led the counterattack. Hera, setting aside all jealousy, fought beside her husband, protecting their Olympian home. Apollo shot plague arrows. Artemis hunted the giants in the shadows. Athena, with her strategic genius, directed the entire battle. And Heracles, he fought with extraordinary strength and courage. Each time a god struck down a Gigantes, it was Heracles who delivered the final mortal blow, fulfilling the prophecy. He fought not just as a soldier, but as a symbol of the union between God and man. In the final battle, Zeus faced Porphyrion, king of the Gigantes, and Heracles faced Alcyoneus, the strongest, who could not be killed in his own homeland. Zeus, with Heracles' help, defeated Porphyrion. And Heracles, realizing Alcyoneus' weakness, dragged him out of his homeland of Pallene and finished him. Victory had come. The Gigantes were destroyed. Olympus was safe once more. When the war was over, Zeus stood on the peak of Olympus, looking down at the battlefield. This time, he did not feel the arrogance of a conqueror. He felt gratitude. He looked at Heracles, his mortal son, and for the first time he fully understood the secret of the throne. The throne was not a peak to look down from. It was a center to connect from. The true strength of a king lay not in being stronger than everyone else, but in his ability to gather the strength of everyone. It was not about domination, but about harmony. To atone for his old sin, and as an act of a truly matured king, Zeus sent Heracles to the Caucasus Mountains. With his strength, Heracles broke the chains and shot down the eagle that had tormented Prometheus. The moment Prometheus was free, an invisible weight was lifted from Zeus's shoulders. The old wound was finally healed. The Titan of foresight and the King of the gods were finally reconciled. Zeus now ruled not just with the Thunderbolt, but with wisdom and forgiveness. He had learned the final lesson. He was truly worthy of the throne of Olympus. Part 10. The Echo from the Throne. And so, order was established. Olympus stood firm, not on fear, but on a balance created from costly lessons. Zeus was no longer the impulsive young god who had overthrown his father, nor the arrogant king who had punished Prometheus. He became a more contemplative, wiser king. His eyes still held the color of a storm, but now, within that storm, there was also the light of understanding. He still sat on the throne, but no longer alone. He learned to listen to Athena's counsel, to enjoy Apollo's music, and to respect Artemis's independence. He and Hera, though their scars would never fade, found a kind of peace, a mutual respect built on the foundation of a home they had protected together. The throne of Olympus is still there, glittering and majestic. But for those who understand the story, it is no longer just a symbol of supreme power. It is a symbol of growth. A reminder that even gods must learn, make mistakes, and can find redemption. The story of Zeus is not a fairy tale about a perfect king. It is a very human story. A story about an individual who must wrestle with his family's legacy, the burden of responsibility, and the flaws within his own soul. He stumbled many times. He caused pain. But in the end, he learned that love, forgiveness, and humility are the strongest pillars for any throne. Would his reign last forever? The myths do not give us a definitive answer, but they leave a legacy. The legacy of an order created from chaos, of a king who learned to rule himself before ruling the world. The throne of Zeus was not just made of gold and marble. It was forged from the sacrifice of a mother, the loyalty of forgotten friends, the challenge of a forward thinker, and the courage of a demigod son. It was tempered in the fires of war and cooled by the tears of regret and understanding. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the true secret of the Olympian throne. It is not a destination, but a journey. A journey that anyone who holds power, whether God or mortal, must travel. Our story comes to an end here. The fire on Olympus still burns, and the echo of the legends still resounds. We have traveled a long road together, from a dark cave on Crete to the shining heights of power. We have seen a god be born, fight, make mistakes, and finally find wisdom. Now, I will not offer a final conclusion. Instead, I want to leave each of you with a question to reflect upon. After all that we have heard, in your eyes, is Zeus a hero or a tyrant? Can his great deeds erase his cruel mistakes? Or is he simply a product of his time, a reflection of the chaotic and beautiful universe he ruled? And more importantly, what does the lesson of Zeus's throne mean for us today? In our human world, where we too have our own thrones, in our families, in our workplaces, in our communities, are we ruling with the thunderbolt of imposition, or with the light of understanding and connection? The answer, perhaps, lies in the heart of each of us. Thank you for listening. I wish you a peaceful night, and may the stories of mythology always be a torch to light our own journey in search of wisdom.